Today, I mostly wanted to talk about the thing that's most prevalently been on my mind, which is self identification. And self identification in regards to like true core descriptors of identity, whether it be gender or sexuality, or even something like I'm going to use furries as an example. And I have grown up in times where when I was younger, they were quite heavily admonished on the early internet because of how they visually and socially identified, which is interesting to me. And it's interesting because I think that every single person on this earth has the capacity to be a furry. That is undoubtedly true, whether it's from the very first depictions of humankind and our very first depictions of divinity or gods. We're all anthropomorphic to some degree. The metaphors we all use, or even corporate agencies and media, children's media, are all about anthropomorphized animals that we're supposed to identify with. Yet, curiously, as we get older, we're taught that identifying with these things is wrong. And why is it wrong? Because, well, I think one of the reasons might be that it is harder to capitalistically convey these ideas without them being so blunt. Or we're told that it might be easier to make and produce things with real people, or the act of suspension of disbelief is wrong, or it makes things harder to understand, which protects a bottom line, basically. And I think that that might be one of many reasons, and part of the system's neatest trick is to create conspiracy where there is none. I'm not going to say that there's a group of people that's in charge of demonizing furries, the secret cabal of anti-furries. I'm not the type of person to try and sway people, or if I did have some sort of grand conspiracy like that, the only time I could think to say that there's some sort of group or evil cult of people is to think that the elites as they have so much money and power that they basically become a sort of cabal like that. The only people that can empathize with their outlooks on life, where they can afford basically everything, they'll choose to segregate themselves amongst the other elites. And so it's not that it's a cult of strong ideals, it's that it's a self-reinforcing social group that has no out. It's like a ideological belief or a dogma. And when people are trapped in these worldviews, instead of seeking to burst these bubbles, they will bury their heads in the sand to try and reinforce this. It's why you can try and convince anyone of anything in open debate, and they will go, la 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 la, I don't hear you. There is on YouTube, there is a 5 hour long video debunking every single transphobic argument, and if you showed that to a transphobe, they just won't agree. They won't agree no matter if every single piece of evidence suggests contrary. They just won't agree because they're told not to. And they won't agree because it tackles a core fundamental belief that they might have. A lot of these people who seek to shame others for the way they self-identify recognize a part of that within themselves, and they're too afraid to express that part of themselves. They're too afraid to even go on the journey to start that self-identification process in order to protect what they are. But not only that, it might jeopardize their capitalistic income, it might jeopardize their social situation. They're afraid of shame. And shame as this cudgel is so far reaching that you'll see. I like to tie the rise of AI in right-leaning groups to AI-generated artworks, I should say, to this sense of shame, and insofar to say that these people who would go to the process to otherwise create good art will choose not to, and fall back on AI as a crutch, simply because AI as a crutch here is distancing yourself enough from the authenticity of the work where you can choose to not be authentic. It's saying like, oh, well, I didn't mean that. I didn't draw that incorrectly. I didn't make a piece of art that was bad. It was the robot. It was the machine, and therefore it's not related to me. A lot of these AI people are like that, and a lot of these people who convey those sorts of ideas that focus around shaming others will tend to rely on AI, which is it's it's once you see it, it's sort of hard to unsee that it's all these very, very, very insecure people about how they self-identify, and they'll fall back on crutches like, let's say the biggest cope is some form of tradition or traditionalist belief, as in to say, this is the way things were, this is the way they ought to be again, or this is the way they ought to be right now, or this is the way that I was grown up to believe, and my childhood was good, so therefore everything should be the same. These people don't understand that all of this comes from a position of cowardice. They do it to protect themselves, because quite frankly, it's the same reason why you might see so many people who are vocally anti-something end up becoming that thing, whether it's being anti-gay or being anti-furry or being anti all sorts of things. It's because of that very thing, or feeling shamed of who they might have been. These detransitioners are a great example of these people who say horrible things because they're ashamed of what they were. Most of the regrets that detransitioners share are about being socially shamed for being who they are. Whether it's the leading cause for regret in gender corrective surgeries is because of social shame. And once you sort of see that, and how shame manages to be this cudgel for people, it becomes more and more telling as to why you should be open about your gender, and why you should be open about your very identity, either as a furry or an animal, or your gender or your sexuality, and why this openness is so vital. It's because it inspires others to, one, not only attempt that journey of self-identification, but also to show others that there isn't anything wrong with that, and that there definitely isn't. I don't have the cowardice to hide my face. I'll put my face to these ideas, to this YouTube account, everything that I'll say now, and I'm not ashamed of that. I'm not ashamed to hide behind anonymity, despite the fact that I think anonymity and privacy is a core tenet to the internet itself, and the values that I have personally. I think that what I say is right when I say it. And another thing about this self-identification process is that part of the reason why you might see so many of these furries or people of different diverse gender and sexual background is because the process of self-identification, it's powerful. It's powerful to go against shame to do that. And it starts with people who are very young thinking, oh, what animal would I be? What's my spirit animal? What animal would I be were I a funny anthropomorphic creature in this world of funny anthropomorphic characters? And that might start people into realizing who they are. And the system seeks to stop you from being who you are in order to keep you trapped in a system where your only value and your only sense of worth comes from capital. And once you start realizing this, and you start realizing who engages in these processes of shame, you start to realize a lot of these things, and a lot of these people who push back, and a lot of these people who are so vocal and adamant, they're only doing so out of insecurity. And it's just very interesting, and I've been thinking about that a lot. Anyway, I don't expect this to be like a YouTube video that reaches people. I've found myself in these discussions a lot lately, and it would be nice to have something to point to that sort of expresses my points. And it might seem a bit ranty, but honestly, if you can't stomach content that's a bit rambly by nature, then you don't deserve to. If you won't go to the effort, then you don't deserve to reap the rewards of a better knowledge of this subject. So I'm sorry, which is a bit of a cope. Sure, it might. Oh, you just don't want to edit your videos. I don't think that it serves it much to do much in the way of editing. It's why I don't exactly intend to appear very well-dressed or well-kempt or even do anything about my scenario and just a recording on a shitty webcam that I have. It's because that the ideas speak for themselves. My appearance, my identity, my everything. This doesn't matter. The ideas that I'm conveying should exist above that. And if you don't think your ideas exist above that, then your ideas are weak. And my ideas are better than yours. So blah, 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 blah. I'm better than you. I'm smarter than you. And I've come to a better understanding about this very world that we live in. And if you think of me mad, then think of me mad. I don't care. It feels... I get a bit of a catharsis saying all of that. It's good, and my happiness is more proof that these people who are miserable and seek to shame me are in the wrong because they're miserable. Wow. What a world we live in, huh?